Prologue, The Weight of Water and Lies. Location, Twisted Mist Keep, the Drowning Hall. The Waterhill dynasty had ruled for 3 centuries from their fortress of black basalt, its tower spearing through the perpetual fog of Lake Vorn. Here, the air reeked of wet stone and the whispers of those sacrificed to Uchalan, the so-called god of cleansing depths. Alaric Waterhill, the current lord, stood at the edge of the sacrificial dock, his ceremonial robes heavy with lake weed and the weight of generations of lies. Below, the waters churned as another offering, a bound thief, his mouth stitched shut with silver wire, was fed to the depths. The lake hungers, intoned the high priest, his voice echoing off the moss-slick walls. Alaric's grip tightened on the tide's trident, the rusted relic of his bloodline. "And we feed it," he replied, though his eyes flicked to the empty chair beside him, where his second son, Arthur, should have sat. Chapter 1, The Rebellion of the Storm-Eyed. Location, the village of Vorn's Maw, Fisherman's Wharf. Arthur Waterhill, the disgraced heir, moved through the mist like a ghost. His hound, Nerthus, growled low in her throat as they passed the gutted remains of the village shrine. The fishermen avoided his gaze, they knew what he carried. The tide's trident burned against his back, its prongs etched with runes that moved when touched by moonlight. He'd stolen it the night his father declared him heir, unable to stomach the lies anymore. "You'll drown for this, boy," spat old man Darrow, clutching a necklace of children's teeth. Arthur's storm-gray eyes hardened. "Then I'll drown knowing the truth." That night, the lake's waters turned black, and the first of the drowned crawled ashore. Chapter 2, The Ashen Alliance. Location, the scorched docks, ruins of the old port. Alaric received word of his son's treachery as he met with Malachi of the Blood Order. The assassin lord stood ankle-deep in the ashes of a burned chapel, his cloak stinking of salt and blood. "Your son has the trident," Malachi said, tossing a severed hand onto the dock, the high priest's, still clutching his ritual dagger. "And Uchalan is awake." Asterisk. Alaric's face betrayed nothing, but his knuckles whitened around the trident's shaft. "What do you want, Bloodhand?" Malachi smiled. "The same thing you do. To bury the past before it buries us." Their pact was sealed with a drop of lake water, and a promise: Arthur would die, and the trident would be returned to the depths. Chapter 3, The Drowned King Rises. Location, the heart of Lake Vorn, Uchalan's throne. Arthur waded into the shallows, the trident humming in his grip. The water recoiled from his touch, revealing a staircase of barnacled bone. At its base sat Uchalan, not a god, but a corpse king fused to his throne of shipwrecks, his hollow eyes fixed on Arthur. "You stole what is mine," the drowned king rasped, his voice the sound of 1,000 souls choking. Arthur raised the trident. "I stole nothing. You were never a god. Just a liar, like my father." Behind him, Nerthus snarled as the first of the drowned surged from the water. Chapter 4, The Lord of Ashes. Location, Twisted Mist Keep, the burning docks. Alaric arrived too late. The village was already aflame, its people fleeing as the drowned dragged them under. His soldiers died screaming, their lungs filling with lake water. At the keep's gates, Arthur waited, the trident dripping black ichor. "You called me heir," Arthur said. "Now see what your faith has wrought." Alaric did not raise his sword. "I knew what Uchalan was. But some lies keep the world from drowning." The trident struck true. As Alaric fell, the lake howled. Chapter 5, The Siege of Twisted Mist Keep. Location, Lake Vorn, the Drowning Gates. Arthur Waterhill stood knee-deep in the bloodied shallows, the tide's trident vibrating with unleashed power. Behind him, the surviving villagers, armed with fishing spears and stolen swords, formed a ragged line against the drowned forces rising from the lake. Each reanimated warrior bore the mark of Uchalan's curse, their eyes blackened pits, their flesh sloughing from waterlogged bones. Malachi watched from the burning docks, his twin blades cutting through the tide of corpses with precise, almost lazy efficiency. "Your father's folly becomes our war, boy," he called to Arthur. "Are you ready to kill what was once yours?" The keep's gates burst open. Alaric emerged, not as a corpse, but something worse. His form twisted, flesh crawling with veins of black water, his eyes now voids reflecting the depths of Lake Vorn. Uchalan's voice rasped through his lips. The lake always claims its own. Chapter 6, The Blood Order's Gambit. Location, the Crimson Spire, Ritual Chamber. While Lake Vorn burned, Malachi's initiates performed their final ritual. The sanguine key glowed as it siphoned power from the distant battle, every death fueling its dark purpose. The bloodletting was precise, each initiate offering their life's essence into the stone basin beneath the spire. "We're not stopping the drowned," gasped Initiate Kayla as her veins darkened, her breath shortening. "We're harvesting them." Malachi placed a hand on her shoulder, eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. "We are ensuring that when the tide turns, it does so under our command." The key pulsed. Across the world, in Metropolis X, the Syndicate's pyre core flared in response, its flames shifting to a deep, abyssal red. Chapter 7, The Fractured Trident. Location, Uchalan's throne, lakebed. Arthur battled his possessed father through the submerged ruins of an ancient city, each strike of the tide's trident sending waves of power rippling through the depths. Alaric, Uchalan, laughed, the sound a bubbling, nightmarish gurgle. "You wield the weapon but not its truth," the drowned king roared, striking Arthur back against a fallen pillar of barnacled stone. Arthur surged forward, thrusting the trident with all his strength. The weapon fractured upon impact, 3 prongs scattering through the abyss. One impaled Alaric's chest, silencing Uchalan's voice. One embedded itself into the throne, cracking the lakebed open. The last was seized by Nerthus, who vanished into the depths. As the lakebed fissured, waters rushed in, swallowing the ruins. Arthur barely surfaced before the force of the collapse dragged him back down. On the shore, Malachi was waiting. "Congratulations," the assassin smirked. "You've just armed 3 new wars." Chapter 8, The Umbra Prophet. Location, Metropolis X, Syndicate War Room. Sebastian Valcrest studied the suddenly active pyre core, its flames showing visions. A hound carrying a trident pronged toward the white forest. A throne fragment burning in a bloodfire ritual. The final prong, still in Arthur's grip. "The drowned god was just the beginning," he murmured. "Now comes the flood." Behind him, Kale Draven tightened his grip on his stolen blade. "Then we'd best start building the ark." Chapter 9, The Frostbound Pact. Location, White Forest Edge. Evelyn awoke to find Nerthus standing before her, the trident prong clutched in the hound's jaws. The metal pulsed with lakewater and something darker. "You'll need this," whispered Victor's shadow from the trees. "For when the fires drown." Around them, the eternal ice of the white forest began melting at an unnatural pace. Chapter 10, The Crimson Tide. Location, the Sundered Spire. Malachi's ritual reached its climax as the last of the Blood Order's initiates dissolved into the key. The resulting wave of energy flooded Metropolis X's streets with boiling blood water. Awoke Elir's corpse in the wastes. Forced Gabriel to raise Solmara's gates against the encroaching red tide. Arthur arrived too late to stop it. "You promised to end this," he shouted at Malachi. The assassin, now half man, half energy, simply pointed upward. The swirling storm clouds formed the shape of a trident. Chapter 11, The God's Womb. Location, the Sky Fracture. The 3 trident prongs resonated across the battlefield. Arthur's, still bound to the lake. Kale's, infused into the pyre core. Evelyn's, now thrumming in the melting forest. The fracture dilated. Something older than gods peered through. Victor materialized fully for the first time, his form cracked with void energy. "You wanted truth?" he asked, his grin sharp as a blade. "Then here's your first lie." Chapter 12, The Ashen Resolution. Location, the Sundered World. In the final moments, Arthur plunged his prong into the fracture, becoming the vessel for Uchalan's power. Evelyn froze the blood tide at the cost of her own mobility. Kale sacrificed his prong to destabilize the Syndicate's pyre core. Gabriel's hammer sealed the fracture, but not before something came through. The world shuddered. The war had ended, but its echoes were just beginning. Epilogue, where ashes meet tide. Location, the sundered world, 1 year after the fracture. The drowned king's vigil. The lake had swallowed Twisted Mist Keep whole. Arthur Waterhill walked its submerged halls, his footsteps stirring silt that glittered like crushed obsidian. The tide's trident, now fused to his right arm from elbow to fingertip, pulsed with every heartbeat, its prongs glowing faintly beneath the water's surface. Nerthus swam beside him, the hound's gills flaring as they passed the skeletal remains of Alaric's throne. "Do they still whisper to you?" came Malachi's voice, drifting through the water like ink. The Blood Order's master was gone, but his presence lingered in the keep's blood-stained stones. Arthur pressed his trident hand against the keep's central pillar. The lake trembled. Somewhere above, rain began falling on dry land for the first time in decades. Not whispers, Arthur corrected. Screams. 2. The frostbound sentinel. The white forest was now a cathedral of ice. Evelyn stood motionless at its center, her body encased in a pillar of glacial blue. The heartwood sapling grew through her outstretched palms, its roots twining around her legs like chains. Villagers left offerings at her feet, bundles of dried herbs, carved bone charms, vials of their own blood. Children dared each other to touch the ice. "She's crying," one whispered, pointing to the frozen tear tracks. "No," corrected an old hunter. "That's the forest weeping." High above, Victor's shadow perched in the dead branches, watching. Waiting. 3. The Bloodfire's aftermath. The Crimson Spire had become a pilgrimage site. Garrick Waterhill, no longer a boy, but not yet a man, presided over the ruins. Initiates, new ones, hungry ones, came to trace the Sanguine Key's runes into their flesh. They didn't understand the rituals, not truly. But they understood the power in the stories. How Malachi's laughter still echoed in the ritual chamber. How the bloodstains on the walls formed new patterns each moon. How the key itself had vanished, only to reappear in the hands of a syndicate defector 3 continents away. Garrick kept his father's dagger sharp. The lake's whispers grew louder every night. 4. The Shadow's new hunt. They found the first body near Solmara's rebuilt walls. A syndicate scout, frozen solid despite the summer heat, his face locked in a scream. Gabriel knelt beside the corpse, his hammer radiating warmth against the unnatural frost. "Victor's work," Lyra said, her fire mage tattoos glowing as she scanned the treeline. Gabriel said nothing. The scout's palm had been cut open, not to remove something, but to insert it. A single scale, blacker than void, etched with a symbol none recognized. 300 miles north, Arthur's trident hand twitched. The Child and the Deep Flame. The orphan girl found it in the ashes of Metropolis X. A shard of the trident, yes, but transformed. The metal had grown translucent, its core swirling with something that was neither fire nor water, but some primordial union of both. When she touched it, the visions came. A city under a sea of liquid flame. Victor kneeling before a throne of fused bones. Arthur standing at the world's edge, his trident raised not in warning, but greeting. "Pretty," the girl whispered, and the shard whispered back.